Okay, we're here today to tell one veteran's story. And the veteran is Bob Swan, Robert Allen Swan, Bob Swan. And Mr. Swan actually happens to be my stepdad. So this is his story, but it could be any veteran's story. And, you know, at whatever age. So I'm just going to be asking Bob to let people know what happened, and we're going to kind of go from there. So Bob, how did you end up with a cane? What happened?
That was given to me when I first had the stroke.
Okay.
That was 2005.
2005.
Yeah.
So, you know, you had a pretty major stroke.
Yeah.
And that left you paralyzed on the right side.
Right.
So your right arm is hasn't been of use at all.
No.
And
well, no.
Right. And your right leg, you can kind of shuffle with it because you're wearing a brace to where, yep, you're wearing a brace to be able to semi-walk with it. So you can walk a few steps with the cane, but most of the time you're here in your retirement community apartment. And so that's kind of your life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the second stroke came while I was here.
Oh, you had second stroke.
Yeah.
Okay. And a little bit more damage, of course.
Yeah, and this is, I don't know.
Okay.
It's partially
works and partially doesn't?
I don't.
Okay. And so some of the things that happened with the stroke is, you know, you're paralyzed and stuff, but a little bit of it took some of your words away. It was really hard for you to communicate, and it still is. Sometimes when you say yes, you really mean no, and vice versa. And so then we're going to go into how the VA came in to helping you out.
Okay. They started in
2015. Yeah, 2015.
July of no.
That's okay.
Probably the first part of the year.
Okay. All right.
And
so I'm making this video regarding my stepdad, Bob Swan, Robert Swan, and our trying to navigate keeping his home health care benefits through the VA. So I kind of want to lay down a little bit of what we've gone through. In the beginning, when Bob had his stroke, as you heard earlier, he was a vet, went in the military when he was quite young. And then he had a major stroke and then 2 other strokes, and he's ended up in with my mother. They live in a retirement community. Why they live there is because that's the cheapest place that we could find for them. We'd love to have them in assisted living, but with the 2 of them, it would probably be somewhere between $7,000 and $8,000 a month. But I want to concentrate on what I've been through with the VA. In the very beginning, back in 2015, and we applied for home health care benefits for my mother taking care of him, and jumped through all the hoops and got everything done, and they were receiving monthly benefits. And what the VA does every year is they reevaluate the claim. And so you send in paperwork at the beginning or right after that every year. And that's not a problem. And where my problem starts is a couple of months ago, I received some information, and they wanted for me to give them detailed accounts of his medical billing and his medical care back to 2015. Now, Bob's 86 years old. He's a stroke victim. He's unfortunately not all there mentally. My mom takes care of him. She's 92 and, you know, needs a lot of help herself. And so I have been doing the paperwork. Here is a stack of paperworks that I have. This is all of his detailed medical expenses for just 2 years. They wanted it back to 2015, but they don't have paperwork back to 2015. They live in a 1-bedroom apartment in a senior housing. They don't have room. They never thought to keep all that stuff, and I certainly didn't. And I was never instructed by the VA to keep all the records from back to 2015 when they first started getting benefits. So I did that. I did all this paperwork and I sent it for 2 years. That's all I had, 2 years. Wrote a letter with it. I can tell you right now, you can fill out all their paperwork, you can write a letter like I did, and they absolutely ignore the letter. They don't care about the letter. They care about the forms that they send you, and the forms have to be just perfect. Well, if you don't have room for everything on a form and you have to write a letter to go with it, which I did, they don't care about the letter. So I did send all that information with a letter, and then I got back on the 12th of July. I got this regarding all this paperwork. They sent me, actually it was about 1 paragraph of what they were going to do. And it says, therefore your claim is considered a duplicate request at this time. You will continue to receive the Veterans Pension benefits with aid and attendance effective February 1st, 2021. So I'm thinking, okay, they got all the information they needed. Everything's good. That was July 12th. So then I get this letter from the VA dated July 21st. And this is much more complicated. It took me a while just to even figure out what they were trying to say. And so they go back to 2015 in the income breakdown and go through it year by year. And what they're saying is that they're not gonna pay him anything else. And what they said is that they had overpaid him to the tune of, I think it was $115,000 or $118,000. And so they were going to continue to pay him, but they were going to take it back. So I made them repeat that a couple of times. So I said, you're going to continue to pay him, but you're going to take it back because your calculations of what you calculated it for was incorrect. Because when they determine what type of benefits the VA is going to give to each vet, they have a calculation. They calculate it. I don't. And so you give them what the vet's assets are, which my parents don't have any assets, and what their billing is, what their bills are, and you give them all those figures, and then they come up with what they determine they're going to pay the individual vet. So they did that. And then they're coming back and saying, we didn't do that correctly. And so, you know, you guys need to pay us back money back to 2015. So what it says here is because your countable income exceeds the maximum income limit for the veteran with 1 dependent for the year 2016. So those figures that they gave me, he is actually over per year of $708, which equals out to about $59 a month. So by their calculations, taking into account what he gets from his pension, they're paying him too much money. They said they're paying him, you know, too much because he's $708 a year over their allowance. But when they do those calculations, they calculate what all his medical needs and bills are. That means all of his trips to the doctors, his what he pays for Medicare, what he pays for supplemental, everything that would be medically necessary for him to live. Now, as I said before, he is a stroke victim, and so there's lots of necessary things that he needs that aren't maybe prescribed by a doctor. He only has one arm and really one leg that works. So he needs special clothing, because when you have only one arm, you can't button things, you can't snap pants, you can't zip pants. So we have to buy special clothing for him. It's easier said than done. It's not always easy to find. So we have to go to medical clothing companies, and of course that takes more money. He has all kinds of issues with his kidneys that are failing, so he needs special type of personal hygiene products. And the VA has kicked out all that, said that that wasn't medical necessary. So when they kick all that out, then that takes him below the amount of money that a person should be making, minus what you're paying for your medical expenses. Some of the things they kicked out were his jeans. He needs special type of clothing. He only has one hand, and so he needs a stylized type of toothbrush because he can't hold a regular toothbrush. There's certain things that he can't do, so he needs a specialized toothbrush. His shoes, because he wears a big old fat brace on one foot, so we have to get him special designed shoes so he can get a shoe over his brace. And then of course on the other foot he wears a regular type of shoe, so you're having to buy two different types of shoes. And the medical needed shoe is much more expensive, so they kicked that out because it's just a shoe. And some of his personal hygiene products that he has to have, they kicked all those out, even though those are things that he needs for his medical situation. So getting that letter, then they give you a page here, your right to seek a review of our decision. So there's different levels that you can do. I'm starting out with the first level, a supplemental claim. And during all this, the last couple of times I've been on the phone with the VA, they've really been trying to talk me into doing things online, because I've always done all this paperwork and then sent it return receipt requested. That's what you want to do if you're a vet listening to this. Don't just put it in the regular mail. Return receipt requested. That way they can't say they didn't get it. So then when I call and try to talk to the Veterans Administration, one of the first things they say is, well, he has a really thick file. There's a lot of work, a lot of paperwork for us to go through because you've sent us a lot of paperwork. And I said, well, I'm sending you a lot of paperwork because I am responding to your paperwork. And so they weren't appreciative of that because, like I said before, you can write a letter to go with whatever you're sending them, and they just, disregard the letter, but I'm going to write it anyway. And so now I'm going through the process of trying to get him registered to do all this paperwork online. I thought, okay, I'll do what you're asking, and I can do that. I have spent the last 3 days on the phone just trying to register him. And the VA just doesn't get it when they're dealing with veterans that are disabled and mentally not all there. Mentally disabled and physically disabled. You would think by now, with the amount of veterans that are out there and what they've had to go through, they would have this fine-tuned, but they don't. So the VA hires a company to verify, and there's lots of companies that do this, big companies that will hire a company to verify their employees' identity. Well, I've been doing that online, and like I said before, you can go through all this paperwork, and it's designed for a veteran that is high-tech, that has a smartphone, which my stepdad does not have a computer, which he does not because he's a stroke victim. He's not going to have a smartphone and a computer being a stroke victim that has brain damage. So I have been authorized to talk to the VA. So, we've gotten through that, and I speak for him, write letters for him, and the VA recognizes that. Does the ID company, the verification ID company, recognize that? No, they don't. So I have been for the last 3 days just trying to get him registered so I can do all this stuff online. And I finally, just about an hour ago, just said, I'm done. I give up. I have tried so many different ways to verify his identity. I have made trips back and forth. Here's one little thing where you get into it. They want you to verify the ID with a driver's license. Okay, so great. And they tell you, okay, you need the driver's license. So I make a trip in. He's 20 miles from me. That's 40 miles round trip, which $4 a gallon for gas. So you could do the math. So I get a picture of his ID, come home, get online, start to do this. And then when you get a little further down, it says, oh, you need a picture of the back of his ID. Big problem. They want that because there's a barcode on the back of driver's licenses in this day and age. The last time he had a driver's license was way before he had his stroke in 2005. So I look at the back of his ID. I go back in there to get a picture of the back of his ID, come back, send it to him, and they won't take it because there's no barcode on the back of the ID, because back in 2005, they didn't put barcodes on the back of IDs. Okay, so he didn't have a barcode on the back. So I come back, get back online, and I'm with the company that verifies ID. And every time I would get kicked off of the site, then I would get a new representative. And every new representative could not just follow the thread. I had to tell them the story all over again. Well, with 2 or 3 people, I thought, okay, I can handle that. Well, I got kicked off and kicked off and kicked off their site. And the last count was person number 10. And so I said, this is ridiculous. I can't keep telling my story. And then you guys, I get kicked off for some reason and go back and tell the story again. I finally got a hold of a lady that was helpful, and she said, oh, and by the way, we can't verify the ID because it's so old. Not even the fact that it doesn't have a barcode on the front, but it's a very old ID. So I said, what's my next option? So my next option was to verify it through their fourth option, which was credit card or credit questions. So I go through all that, and that was today. And I've got the ID.me rep on one part of my computer, and on the other part, I've got the site where he's walking me through it. And so I get through the whole thing, and at the very end, it can't be verified because all the information is under Bob, of course. I'm putting the information in, but it's under him. And so then, to verify it, at the very end, they send you a code on your smartphone. Well, he's 20 miles away from me, and he doesn't have a smartphone. So the rep goes, okay, so dump that, restart it, and do everything again. And when it comes to the phone, put your phone number in. So I do that, and it still doesn't work. And this time it's because they says, I've tried too many times, and so now I need to go to a more complicated way of verifying ID, and they need more information, so they need more documentation, and they need a selfie, and all this other stuff that they need, which entails for me to make another trip into town, 20 miles in and 20 miles out at $4 a gallon. You do the math. So that's where I'm stuck with, and I said, okay, I'm done. I said, this isn't working. Obviously, the VA working with an ID company is not taking into account that we have a a selection of our demographics of people that are much older and are not high tech, don't have smartphones, don't have computers, have real issues. You know, they can't do all that. That's why I am the designated person, but they won't accept me because all the information is regarding him. So then when you start mixing it, all the information's him, but with my phone number, they get all confused and stop. So I've been instructed to, you know, do another step, and I said, okay, I'm done. I can't do this anymore, and I'm going to go back to the paper route. So I am back to the paper route, and I'm sure that I'm going to get lots of information from the VA trying to talk me into doing all this stuff online. But now I have to send in a proper appeal, a supplemental claim, and they give you this paperwork here, and of course, you know, they only give you a very small amount of space to write an appeal for every little thing that they declined. So for the fact that they declined his special clothing or his special shoes, they give me this little tiny spit here. And so if I want to write something more, which I do, then I have to write another letter. And are they going to read the letter? Probably not. And so that's kind of where I'm at. And so it's going to take me a little bit of time to fill this out and get it sent in. And again, I send it return receipt requested and wait for them to contact me. The reason I was trying to do stuff online is because they tell you that it's so much quicker. You don't have to wait so long for a decision. And so this is, you know, this is messing up what's left of their lives, and certainly ours. Just today, I was speaking with my parents, and my stepdad was so upset. He was going to have the home care person that comes and helps him with his home care skip days because they can't afford it. So they get in with their pension, and with the VA, they get in just enough to cover their rent, their medical insurance, their supplemental, and what they have to pay for medications. Now, you know, at the beginning of the year, everybody has to pay, you know, a deductible. And so, you know, I'm not going to go through that, but people's insurance and what you pay for a deductible depends on what kind of a program and what policy you get. But you have to pay the deductible. So you're paying, you know, an extra $300 or $400 a year to begin with, that your insurance, that's your deductible. Your insurance isn't going to pay for that. So that's a deductible for each one of them. And then at the end of the year, like every other program, you all know about this if you're a vet, your insurance, your supplemental, you have what's called a donut hole. And so there's lots of where you fall in that donut hole at the end of the year, and your medications could not be paid for. That's what happens to my parents, my mom and my stepdad. He takes about 15 different medications plus supplements a day, 15 pills a day. So you can imagine how much their prescriptions are. So of course, they are not going to make enough to pay for their rent and their supplemental insurance and their bills, which their bills, they don't spend any money because they don't go anywhere because they're old and because of COVID. So they're pretty much housebound. So they don't really spend money other than on, you know, a few little things that they can't get to eat there, things that they like. But other than that, they don't go shopping. They don't buy things. They live a pretty scaled down existence. And so now we're kind of stuck because they're not going to be bringing in enough money per month to pay for their rent, to pay for their supplemental insurance, and to pay for their medications. So he's already talking about letting his home health caregiver go. And I said, absolutely not. You can't do that because He's 6'2". My mom's not even 5 foot. She cannot help him anymore do his morning daily bathing and hygiene because he's fallen a couple of times. If he falls on her and she goes down, it's all over. So we have a home health care guy that comes in every other day. So they're thinking about sliding back on that. And I said, no, that's not an option. We can't do that. And I realized probably the next thing they're going to say is, well, we're going to start cutting our medications in half, or we're going to start skipping our medications. So really what I want to talk about is, here is a vet that the system is failing this guy. He entered the military when he was 18, when sent overseas because it was the right thing to do. And we have people flooding into our country from all over the place, and we are greasing the skids for them. I mean, they come into our country, we haul them in, and we give them the lowdown. This is where you can get medical care. This is where you can get housing. This is where you can get food. This is where you can get aid for dependent children. This is where is due you. But these people that have fought for our country, we are making them jump through hoops that are absolutely ridiculous, especially when it comes to veterans that are disabled and mentally disabled. And it makes me wonder, you know, about these 13 Americans that were just killed in Afghanistan. What are we going to make their families do? How are we going to serve their families? Because if their families have to go through a little bit of what I've had to go through, it's going to be a rude awakening for them, especially since they've lost their husband or their son in Afghanistan, and then we fail them miserably. But we are so busy handing out benefits to people that are not even Americans, let alone veterans that have fought for our country. So I'm requesting that you not only view this video, but share it. I want to be able to help veterans and their families navigate the system. So it's going to be up on different social media sites. I will put it on YouTube and some of our other social media sites. I also will end up sending it to the head of the Veterans Administration in DC and to our Washington State Senators, Maria Cantwell and Patty Murray, who are our Democratic senators that my parents have voted for every election. They have voted for Patty Murray and Maria Cantwell. So I am going to be sending this video, and I certainly hope that they can find in some way to not only help this vet, but other vets navigate the system. Thank you.